Welcome to the John Cady podcast. I'm John Cady, U.S. Navy retired, former minister. I'm going to talk about, in this podcast, the former minister part of my introduction. For those who have known me for a long period of time, family, longtime friends, acquaintances, co-workers, will know that I was at one time a licensed minister in a non-denominational ministry that had very strong Pentecostal origins. I was active in this ministry for a total of 16 plus years, and I held license for 12 of those years until I made the fateful decision to walk away in March of 2003. That decision to leave wasn't easy. For the privacy of those who attend and were not involved in any of the activities, I will not name the name of the ministry here. If anyone is curious, it's all over the internet. You can type my name in Google. You're going to find it at some point if you talk about John Cady, abusive churches, John Cady, cult affiliation, stuff like that. It's all over there. And anybody who is nosy enough to get on the internet and look, it's there. I'm not going to hide it. There were things that went on behind the scenes. In particular, the founder of this ministry was involved in some very nasty stuff, including some heinous acts against minors, which ultimately led to him being put in prison. He was sentenced to 31 years without parole. He died while he was incarcerated, having served less than 7 years of his sentence. After that, more and more questions were raised about who knew what was going on and how long did they know. Stories just simply weren't adding up. It got to the place where I could no longer defend the founder's actions or his legacy. I even submitted a reform proposal to the leadership of that ministry in hopes to change things for the better, only to have that reform idea shot down in flames. I continued to observe other activities, especially with some of my friends and associates who attended. And finally, at a church meeting in March of 2003, these 3x5 cards were handed out, basically saying yes or no if you wanted the local pastor to be your pastor or not. I put down no because I realized that I could no longer trust the leadership in this organization. They covered up things. In my opinion, they lied. And as a result, I could no longer walk with them. I had to leave. For me to stay would have meant I had to stick around and pretend that everything was okay. And my conscience could not and would not let me do it. More importantly, God would not let me do it. For those who say, well, you're supposed to abide where you were called. You're supposed to abide where you were planted. A fish out of water will die. Well, I'll say this. A fish will die if it's in a poisoned pond, too. And this pond had become poisoned because of the sin of that ministry's founder and the actions of those who followed. I could not abide in a poisoned lake anymore. I had to leave. I went to other churches. The journey out of that organization and then eventually finding my way into a larger ministry, in particular, the one from which my previous church broke away from, I found a similar problem. But it wasn't just because of abuse by individuals, but it was also questions about teachings of finances. One of the biggest challenges in dealing with any church is when they start talking about money and when they start pressuring people to give, and especially when it comes to tithing. If one wonders what tithing is, that's where they try to tell you to give 10% of your income to the church. And they use scriptures from the Old Testament, in particular from the book of Malachi, to shake people down for their money. I was blocked and refused fellowship with an individual who pastored a oneness church out of Florida and did missionary work in the Philippines for the sole fact that I disagreed with him about tithing. I do not see in the New Testament where Jesus commanded it. I don't see where it was enforced or practiced by any of the disciples. So if they didn't push the issue and didn't force it upon anybody, then why are we in the church community doing it to the people? The whole thing about tithing and the question about finances and started to eat at me. I realized that I could not in good conscience teach this when we're pressuring congregations to go into poverty while some of the pastors live in luxury. That is just garbage. I could not feel comfortable teaching that anymore. If the congregation, for the most part, are living in Section 8 housing, living off of their welfare checks or minimum wage jobs, while the pastor has brand new cars, a $500,000 house, and so on, something's wrong. Part of that, too, came from, as I read more about the ever-present 501c3. This was the place where I ended up being asked to leave this larger organization. I will name it by name. It was the United Pentecostal Church International, because they preach very hard and very heavy on finances, especially pressuring people to tithe. And I noticed, though, that as more of the pastors were signing up for and getting this 501c3, it ended up with messages being watered down. I could sense compromise coming in. I started bringing it up. I asked, where's the sense of urgency in all this? What did I get for my curiosity? What did I get for voicing my concern? In a healthy church, these concerns should immediately open up a pathway to discussion so that we could all discuss and work out a solution together. But that was not going to happen. I was instead told, John, I appreciate your concern, but, that big but there, but he's the pastor. I knew at that moment I was no longer welcome in this religious organization anymore because they did not like what I had to say. Prior to this, I attended a conference in downtown Baltimore where the general superintendent was speaking. He opened the floor up for questions, and I had a couple very serious questions that pertained to the health of the United Pentecostal Church as a whole. I made the superintendent very uncomfortable. Not because I was trying to make him uncomfortable, but because I had concerns. I wanted answers. And instead of giving it to me straight, which is what I wanted, he tap danced around it, gave me some half-hearted answers, and I walked away from that conference less than satisfied. There's part of my story in finding out why I'm not in an organized church right now. It's because I have yet to find one where I feel welcome and also where I can just simply agree to disagree with some of the teachings and not be shown the door because I don't agree with everything that's said. This is John Cady. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy these podcasts, hit like, hit subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one.